This podcast was created to educate listeners on the experiences of diverse individuals. However, all opinions expressed by the host or guests do not reflect the overall standing of Tarleton Radio or Tarleton State University.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Making Space, a Diversity Dialogue. I'm your host, Cole, and this is a biweekly podcast where together we'll have questions answered about socially sensitive topics while learning how to create lasting relationships with diverse people. This episode is part 2 of a 2-part series called Non-Traditional Students. The first part of this series started out discussing an auditing student. That just means they come into class without having any sort of credit associated with it, not going towards a degree, but taking the class for learning's sake. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend. I had an interview with someone named James Woodward. He is a frequent volunteer here at Tarleton radio station. I really enjoy talking to him. So if you guys want to go ahead and listen to that first part, it is going to be the episode right before this one. Now, this episode, we're going to be talking to a traditional, non-traditional student, so to speak. She is looking to get her bachelor's degree in music education. She is a senior in the music education program. This is her second year here at Tarleton, and she does have an amazing family. She has a husband and 2 kids, so she'll be talking a little bit about that. She is also a percussionist in the fine arts department, so that's really, really cool. All right, folks, I'm just going to hop right into the interview. This is Jessi McDonough from Tarleton State University. Hello, everyone, and you're listening to Making Space. I am Cole, and I am with Jessi McDonough. Thank you so much for coming on.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Now, we'll get started by talking a little bit about yourself. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a student here at Tarleton. I'm a senior this year, a music major, but I also, at home, I've been married for 11 years this year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. We also have 2 children. So I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old at home, and I pretty much did life first after I graduated high school, and then when my kids got into school, decided to come back and do school for me. So
wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Is this your first experience with a 4-year university, or have you gone before and then stopped and come back?
So when I very first graduated, I went to a community college, but I didn't finish out my first semester. Just life kind of happened in a series of circumstances. I didn't finish the semester.
Right.
Met my husband. Like I said, he was military, so we moved army bases and stuff.
It's hard to put down roots when you're
right.
moving.
Life happened in the middle, and then when I went back to the same community college I started at.
Really?
Yeah. And I did 2 years at Hill and then transferred from there to here.
Okay. Do you see much difference between going to a community college and going to a 4-year university?
I think that is really dependent on geography. Because I find here, being a music major, I did auditions at different universities before I decided. And the culture here is very tight-knit. It feels very much like the closeness of a community college. Because, there's a lot of us here, but it's not, super overpopulated.
Right,
you know what I mean?
It's not like if you go to a big city.
Right. So it still feels familial here, which is nice. It was an easy transition, I think, for that reason.
Okay. Good. Do you feel any differences between how the students have reacted in the classroom?
Regarding me? So I always, even when I went back to Hill and did that community college thing before I transferred,
right.
Everybody's always a little unsure of me.
I see.
Are you a TA? Are you a teacher?
Oh,
are you a student? You know what I mean? Because there's a decade, sometimes more, between whoever my peers are. So when I got here in our department, I'm a percussionist. So in our department, I walked in and they were all very confused. Are you a graduate assistant? What are you? And I'm like, no, I'm literally one of you guys.
Yes, please treat me the same.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. Everybody kind of gets over that really quickly. Once you figure out that, oh, she's just a student,
Okay. So you feel
accepting.
Welcomed after that little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely. Good. What is your experience like when you first came to Tarleton with administration and faculty, staff?
For the most part, the only people that I've dealt with in that aspect are in the music department, in the FAC. And they're all phenomenal. Like, I could not ask for better, more supportive, and like flexible humans to work with.
That's great.
Yeah, they've been awesome. They're super understanding. Like, it's really rare. I try to be really careful, like, not to let my status as like outside of school, like my mom and wife
Right.
mode interact too much, because I don't know. I just think that would be unfair to look at that really often. But occasionally, like, things do happen and come up, and
Of course.
anytime that happens, like, they're just so supportive of that and really flexible with all of that. So
That's really good. I recently did an episode with a mom and a soon-to-be mom, and they were having some struggles with classes, but I'm glad that some of that is better depending on what department you're in.
Yeah,
right?
I have no complaints there. Yeah.
Good. So what was it like? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience for your first class in person here at a four-year university?
Let
Like,
me
what did it feel
think.
like?
Trying to think of what that was. I'm kind of my personality is kind of I don't know. I don't want to say sarcastic, but I'm pretty facetious. Like, I'm pretty straightforward, a little
Yeah.
blunt, like
Yeah.
and I think like my age difference on top of that comes off sometimes as just really intimidating. So
yeah.
I spent the first few weeks I was here probably just kind of like laying low and
I'm trying not to
doing-
intimidate
right.
too many people.
right. My husband's always like, "You're probably terrifying them. Like, stop making weird jokes." And I'm like, "I'm sorry. You're probably right." So yeah, I spent my first couple weeks kind of just like trying to figure out the vibe of the campus. Like, what do people do here? And like, it's a weird line walking. Like, yes, I'm a student and like I fit in and I've made really great friends here. But at the same time, like,
You're still on a technically different
Right.
kind of path in life.
exactly.
Speaking of being on campus and kind of being involved, do you feel like your non-traditional status has changed your feeling to go to activities and go to events on campus? Do you go? Do you bring your family?
So sometimes, for the most part, the issue with that is that I live so far. So I commute from
right.
Cleburne.
Right.
So especially in our department, like when we have recitals and concerts and stuff in the evening, like I go to those as much as I can, but somebody needs to go home and make dinner. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like bath
right, for
times
sure.
and homework, and that other part of my life like dictates a lot of what I'm able to participate in here. So
Do you think if you didn't live so far away, you would be more involved on campus? Do you feel that reaching out from
for
Tarleton?
like, oh yeah, like that's pretty constant. It's a pretty tight-knit group over there in that part of the campus.
Right.
So I can't speak much for like the other organizations and stuff. I really don't hear much about them. But again, it's because I like come and get my stuff done for the most part and have to go home.
Right.
But stuff that is in like my area of the world here, I for sure like all the time will pass people in the hallway and they're like, "Hey, like Tuesday if you're not busy, like my thing is going on, or we've got a concert Thursday night," or it is super welcoming.
Good. Good. Can you describe your experiences juggling family and life and going to school? I know we kind of talked about that already, but do you have any negative experiences with that? Any positive ones?
So I am super fortunate in that my husband is just immensely supportive. Like he's just a really good human, honestly. He has been a huge part of me being successful just because he's very much like, I know this is what you've done forever. Like, I was a stay-at-home mom and wife for over a decade. Like, that's what I did. So coming back for me was partially because I'm like an academically driven person. Like, I really like the validation of, haha, here's the work you've done. Here's like a tangible, hardcore grade for what you've done.
Like one of those people who puts it on the fridge. That's
Yes.
Like, I got
Yes.
an A on this
Absolutely. That's just who I am by nature. So for me, like when my kids got back to school, it was kind of a sense of like part of my identity left. And I was like, I need some kind of validation. And he was like, this is what you love to do. Like, this is what you always did before we had kids and stuff. Like, if that's what you want to do, you should. And like, world's going to go on. We're going to make it happen and work until you're finished. So
It's great to have that support
yes,
system.
he's so
there.
good. So there is a little bit of, I don't know, like I struggle on the other side of that. Like there's a positive, but negatively, like I struggle with mom guilt a lot.
Oh?
Just because I do, like, you do miss things being here. Like,
I guess that makes sense.
if we have, especially during football season, like Saturday football games is also when like basketball and volleyball games happen for my kids. So
Right.
in order for me to do what it is that I'm doing, like it takes sacrifice on the other end of it, which is super hard. But again, he's kind of just like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's cool. Like, I'll take some video. You can talk about him after the game. Like, I don't know. He makes balancing that mom guilt a lot easier, I think.
That's good. Do you feel it hard to kind of mix your student life with your mom life? Do you feel it taking over your home sometimes? Do you feel like family taking over your classes sometimes?
I don't think so much. Maybe in the beginning, like when I very first started, just because as an academic person, like I stress over every little thing that's not perfect.
I feel that.
The worst part of my personality. So I did struggle with that the first couple of years, just like leave school at school and leave work home at home, you know. I've gotten a lot better about that now. It's not as bad. And I'm like, they're kind of integrated in a sense that like I have made really good friends here, and I made really good friends before I transferred. And so some of those people like have come to have dinner at my house. Like they know my family knows them. That's been nice.
Yeah, that is really nice. I'm glad that it just takes experience then, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It
was
takes
definitely a struggle in the beginning.
A year, a semester, a couple semesters to try to figure it all out. Now, what would you say the most challenging part of being a quote-unquote non-traditional student, someone who's not college age?
To be completely honest?
Yeah. Go for it. This is the podcast where you can be honest.
I have the tendency just to sometimes, like, I wake up and I'm just like, I'm so annoyed with, like, the opinion of everyone that's in this building right now. Like, the age difference sometimes is really apparent for me. And just, like, oh, like, kind of like being at home with my 8-year-old. Like, I love you, but you have not stopped talking for 40 minutes. And I need a timeout for me. Like, I cannot listen to you anymore today. So maybe that sometimes, but.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of experience in just life, not necessarily in the topic that you're talking about in class, but in life that you're like, you don't really necessarily understand what goes on.
There's a lot of that. And I struggle a lot with, I would say, like, I'm pretty empathetic and compassionate as a human, but I struggle with just, like, the bad excuse thing, like, having excuses for everything. Like, in some of my classes, or, like, even, like, further distance peers that I have, they're like, I overslept today and came in late. I'm just like, you live 5 minutes from here. Like, I got 2 small humans ready for school, made breakfast, and drove an hour and was on time.
Right.
So.
Right. I definitely am guilty of that because I live right over there.
Yeah. It's common. It's not just you. But I'm just like, I don't know. I love you, but I don't care. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the challenging part. What would you say is the most rewarding part of being who you are, being a student right now?
I think I appreciate way more of my education now than if I had done it in the beginning. Like, I don't know. I've always liked school. Like, I like to learn. So that has never been a struggle for me. But, like, learning things now and obtaining new knowledge now is way different than when I was 18. Like, so much more of it is more applicable, and so much more of it, like, I see a worldview of versus just, like, going through the motions to get my degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely feel like some students, and even definitely I'm guilty of this too, is just going through a class and saying it's on my degree plan, so I have to do it. And you kind of lose that value of learning to learn, which is something we talked about last episode, if you listeners had listened to that one. But
yeah, like, you know, yes, I have to take this, but also I learned some really cool stuff in it that I don't know if I'll ever use again, but I've got it, like, in my bank of stuff that I know now. It's kind of cool, you know?
Do you find it easier to learn things now than you did before?
I don't know easier. I don't know harder either, though. I think I just see them from different facets now, which is cool for me.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's easier or harder, but it's different.
It's different, yeah. You have, like you said, you have life experience to add to it.
Right.
So you have more of those examples that a lot of professors are looking for.
Right.
They're like, okay, so can you give me an example of this that happened in your life? Well, I've only done school.
Let me dig through my file. Yeah. Right. I have all the examples. Just hold,
Do you have any advice to students who are, or prospective non-traditional students looking to maybe go back to school or start school back with a family to take care of too?
My biggest probably bit of advice would be find support. Like, it is just, I cannot imagine doing it like single mom in it, or even being married to somebody that wasn't my husband, that wasn't like just gung-ho about, you know, if you want to better yourself, do that.
Right.
Like, I think it's really important, and I think it's always a good thing when anybody wants better for themselves, whether they're grown or 15. Like, always be better and always grow and always want more for you than you have right now. And it's just super important, and I think people don't put enough stock in themselves and their potential.
Yeah, that's a good way to have an outlook on life, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's so much information in this world that we need to go and find or should want to go and find.
And it's all, I actually was just having that conversation a few minutes ago before I walked over here. Like, we literally have all of the information in the world, like, at our fingertips. And very rarely, like, are we pressed to actually look at it.
Right.
You know, it's so much easier just to, like, talk about the little bit you know, or, you know.
It takes effort.
Yes. And there are so many people in this world with so many perspectives. Like, sit down and talk to one of them.
Exactly.
You know?
That's what I'm trying to do on this podcast.
Yeah.
So are there things that other students or listeners might be able to do to help or advocate for non-traditional students?
I don't know. I just get to know them, which, as I've found, like, that's already happening where I'm at. Like, for the most part, everybody's, like, taking the time to get to know me, and like numerous times already, I've made a bunch of really good friends here. And I think it's just taking, just like it is with any new kid. Like, I don't think it's any different.
Okay.
Like, just take the time to get to know them, and for the most part, you know, we're still people at the end of the day.
Right.
You know.
Do you find other students reaching out to you first, or do you have to reach out first?
It's probably a good mix of both. Like I said, I'm pretty straightforward and abrasive sometimes. So it just depends. I think it goes both ways.
Okay. Well, are there any experiences or any topics we didn't touch on that you wanted to share about being a non-traditional student, having a family while being at school?
Maybe just be aware. Like, and it's not like any one person in particular. I think it's just like the mindset of a younger person. You're still kind of like finding your place and where you fit in everywhere. Right. And it tends to be a little egocentric sometimes, which is okay. Like, that's part of the learning curve, but you have to understand, especially like when there's people that are non-traditional students on campus, or even if you make friends with them, like, further than that, like, there are times like priorities just happen, you know? Right. And like, I think sometimes, like, traditional students aren't aware of that. Like, well, this is really important to me. Like, why didn't they show up for it? Or why didn't they? Well, you know, because I had another life at home.
Of course.
You know? Your
life actually has to center on other people.
Exactly. Like, I still, even though, like, it's put as a priority in my house, like, oh, like, this is what mom's doing and it's awesome. And like I was telling you earlier before we started talking, I had my junior recital yesterday.
Right.
I came home, like, my family wasn't allowed to come due to COVID regulation. So they watched a live stream of it. And when I got home, my son was just, oh my gosh, he was stoked. He was like, Mom, it was so good. Like, Dad put it on the TV, and like, we watched the whole thing. And like, it's for sure, like, they've made my education and my betterment of myself a priority in our house, but it still is second to taking care of them at the end of the day, you know? So.
For sure. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm so glad you asked me.
And sharing your experiences. Yeah. I'm so glad to have your voice on here, just so people can understand what it's like.
Yeah.
And maybe what they could do better next time. Maybe reach out to someone in your class that is non-traditional, or just reach out and make friends.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Once again, that was Jessi McDonough coming into the Tarleton radio station studio to talk about her experiences as a non-traditional student with a family and trying to further her education and go back to school. Thank you so much again, Jessi, for coming on the show. I really, really enjoyed having you, and I'm sure the listeners have really enjoyed having you as well. If you folks have any more questions, or is there something we didn't cover that you really wanted to know about, don't hesitate to message us or send us questions on our social media at The Planet 100.7 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That is the radio station we're based out of. Be sure to check back next week for a live dialogue bonus episode with our partnership with Tarleton State University's Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and International Programs. This episode's topic focuses on food and shelter insecurity and Indigenous populations. I am really looking forward to hearing this. You don't hear much about Indigenous populations, and I'm hoping to get you guys some more information on that group of people. Really hope you guys enjoy that episode as well. Keep a lookout for that next week. Again, if you guys haven't listened to the first part of this series, Non-Traditional Students, I really recommend it. James Woodward was a great interview. I'm sure you guys will love it too. For updates on the show, folks, again, you can go to The Planet 100.7 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can visit our website, kxtr.com, and you'll find some information there. Until next time, folks, be safe out there and take care.
This has been a Tarleton Radio Network podcast with production from me, Taylor Welch.
And me, Carissa Cole.
Find more great shows by searching Tarleton Radio Network wherever you get your podcasts.